Beloved chosen one, this moment is not small, and it is not ordinary. Something holy happened when you finally stopped wrestling with what God had already made clear. When you finally laid down the exhausting need to control every outcome. When you finally said yes in your spirit even before every detail in your life had changed. All of heaven erupted in joy because you finally walked in His will. You may have thought your decision was quiet. You may have thought nobody saw the tears, the trembling, the private surrender. The long night where your heart finally broke open and you said, Lord, I will obey you even if it costs me comfort. Even if it confuses people, even if it leads me where I have never gone before. But heaven saw it. Heaven marked it. Heaven responded to it. You need to understand what makes this so powerful. God is not impressed by empty words, polished appearances, or religious performance. He looks for the yielded heart. He looks for the soul that finally stops running. He looks for the one who says, not my will, but yours. And when that kind of surrender rises from within you, there is rejoicing in the realm you cannot see. The same world that has watched your warfare, your delay, your confusion, your tears, and your silent battles now also witnesses your turning point. This is why the atmosphere around your life begins to shift when you choose obedience. Peace begins to enter where chaos used to rule. Strength begins to stand up in you where fear once sat heavily. Direction begins to form where there was only fog. It does not mean every problem vanishes in a moment. It means your feet are now planted on the path where grace flows. For a long time, you may have lived in the tension between calling and hesitation. Deep down, you knew there was a way God wanted you to walk, but part of you still feared the loss that might come with full obedience. You feared what you would have to leave behind. You feared who would misunderstand you. You feared the stretching, the pruning, the breaking of old habits, the ending of old cycles, the death of old identities. That fear made you pause. That fear made you delay. That fear made you look back. But even in your delay, the mercy of God stayed near you. He did not abandon you in your wrestling. He kept calling. He kept warning. He kept drawing you with kindness. And now that you have responded, now that you have stepped forward instead of shrinking back, you are standing in a moment that carries eternal weight. Do not minimize what your yes means. Your yes is not just about a new chapter. Your yes is evidence that your spirit is awakening to agreement with heaven. Your yes is proof that pain did not harden you beyond reach. Your yes is proof that disappointment did not fully poison your trust. Your yes is proof that after everything you endured, there is still something alive in you that recognizes the voice of God and chooses to follow it. That is why heaven rejoices. Not because you became perfect overnight, but because you became willing. Willingness is sacred. Willingness opens doors that talent cannot open. Willingness invites divine strength into human weakness. Willingness tells God, I do not have every answer, but I trust the one who does. There are people around you who may never understand the depth of what shifted inside you. They may see only an outward choice. They may see only a boundary you set, a habit you left, a relationship you released, a commitment you made, a step you took. But what happened beneath that visible act is far greater. Something inside you came into alignment. The war between conviction and compromise reached a breaking point, and conviction finally won. The battle between comfort and calling came to a head, and calling finally took the lead. The struggle between flesh and spirit was real, but this time spirit rose. This time, obedience spoke louder than fear. This time, surrender became stronger than resistance. And because of that, you must not look back with longing. The old place may still call your name. but it no longer carries your future. The old version of you may still try to rise, but it no longer has the authority to define you. There is a reason your spirit felt heavy when you kept resisting. There is a reason your soul felt restless when you tried to make peace with what God had already told you to release. Disobedience always drains what obedience restores. Compromise always clouds what surrender clarifies. The joy you are beginning to taste is the fruit of alignment. The peace you are beginning to feel is the reward of agreement with God. So breathe in this moment. Let it settle deep into your heart. You are not being punished by being called higher. You are being trusted. You are not losing your life by following His will. You are finding it. The road may still be narrow, and the journey may still require courage. But you are no longer wandering without direction. You are walking under instruction. You are walking under covering. You are walking under divine attention. And yes, there will be resistance because darkness hates what obedience unlocks. But hell does not rejoice over your obedience. Heaven does. That alone should tell you how precious this step truly is. If this message is confirming what God has done in your spirit, type 888 in the comments as your sign that you are no longer turning back. Let this truth anchor you tonight. The joy of heaven is not shallow celebration. It is the response of a kingdom that recognizes alignment, restoration, and return. You were never created to drift endlessly between two opinions. You were never designed to live half surrendered, half available, half committed, half awake. You were made for wholehearted obedience. You were made to walk in step with the one who formed you. And now that you have taken that step, now that you have finally chosen His will over your fear, there is movement in places you cannot yet see. Chains begin to weaken, paths begin to clear, assignments begin to awaken. What felt locked begins to loosen, what felt buried begins to stir. So stand firm in what you have chosen. Do not apologize for obeying God. Do not shrink because others remain comfortable in compromise. Do not doubt the value of what happened simply because the world did not clap for it. Heaven did. The Father did. And that joy over your obedience is not a passing emotion. It is a sign that your life is now moving in the direction it was always meant to go. You know what it feels like to stand at the edge of obedience while everything familiar still pulls at your name, because the first steps into God's will are rarely comfortable. They do not begin with full understanding. They begin with trust. They begin with surrender. They begin with the quiet but costly decision to move when God speaks. Even when the road ahead has not been fully explained, that is why your journey in this season connects so naturally with Abraham. His story is not only about promise, it is about the holy disruption that happens when a person finally stops building life around comfort and starts building life around God's voice. Abraham was not standing in certainty when God called him. He was standing in the middle of what he already knew. He had surroundings that made sense, patterns that felt familiar, and a life that could have remained predictable. Then the voice of God interrupted the ordinary. God called him to leave his country, his kindred, and his father's house and go to a land that would be shown to him. Notice the weight of that moment. God did not hand him a full map. God gave him a call. That is how obedience often begins for you as well. The Lord does not always reveal the whole path before He asks for your first step. He asks for your trust before He shows you the outcome. That is why this message reaches so deeply into your spirit. You have spent enough time wrestling with what God has already made clear. You have stood in places where your heart knew that remaining the same would be easier for the flesh, but dangerous for the soul. You knew there were habits, environments, mindsets, or attachments that could no longer travel with you if you were going to walk fully in His will. Still, The cost of leaving what is familiar can feel heavy. Abraham knew that weight. Obedience for him was not a poetic idea. It was movement. It was departure. It was a real separation from what had defined normal. There is something powerful about the fact that Abraham moved before he saw the promise with his natural eyes. That is the kind of faith heaven honors. He did not wait until everything became convenient. He did not tell God that he would obey after every condition felt safe. He moved because God's word had become greater to him than his fear. This is where your own story begins to mirror his. Your turning point is not just that you finally agreed with God in theory. It is that you have begun to move in response to him. Even if your movement is trembling, it is still holy. Even if your understanding is incomplete, your obedience is still precious. The beauty of Abraham's story is that his yes did not erase every challenge. It introduced him to a walk of deeper dependence. That matters because many people imagine that once they enter God's will, every inner battle should disappear at once. But real obedience leads you into trust that must be renewed again and again. Abraham had promise over his life, yet he still faced delay. He still had moments where the promise seemed distant. He still had to learn how to believe God in the stretch between calling and fulfillment. In the same way, your first act of surrender is not the end of your formation. It is the beginning of it. This is where heaven keeps watching closely. Not only when you first say yes, but when you keep saying yes while the promise is still unfolding. Abraham had to learn that God's timing is not human timing. He had to learn that divine purpose is not built by frantic striving. He had to learn that waiting with God is better than running ahead without him. You are learning that too. When you finally walk in his will, you do not become passive, but you do become anchored. You stop forcing doors that God has not opened. You stop making idols out of speed. You stop measuring your life only by what can be seen right now. You begin to live by a deeper confidence that what God has spoken, he will fulfill in his way and in his time. This is why Abraham fits this season so well. He shows you that obedience is not only about leaving something behind, it is also about becoming someone new. Every step away from the old terrain was also a step into identity. He was not just changing location on doors. He was learning covenant. He was learning dependence. He was learning what it means to belong fully to God's unfolding plan. That same shaping is happening in you. As you move away from compromise and into surrender, you are not merely losing old patterns. You are being formed into someone who can carry promise without worshiping the promise more than the promiser. Hold close the words of Scripture here. By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8. That is one of the clearest pictures of sacred trust in all of Scripture. He went out not knowing, but he did know the one who had called him. That is the foundation under your feet right now. You may not know every detail of where this path leads, but you know who spoke to you. You know who confronted your compromise. You know who called you higher. You know who stirred your spirit until you could no longer remain divided. So do not despise these early steps of faith. They may look small to others, but in the kingdom they carry weight. Leaving what is familiar for the sake of God's voice is never wasted. Trusting him before the evidence appears is never wasted. Choosing obedience over comfort is never wasted. Abraham's greatness did not begin the day the promise fully manifested. It began the day he believed God enough to move. In the same way, something has already begun in you. Heaven rejoices not because your whole story is complete, but because your feet are finally on the road of surrender. And once a heart truly begins to walk with God, nothing remains ordinary again. You begin to see now that obedience does not remove pressure. It reveals what was always hidden beneath it. Once Abraham stepped away from the familiar and began walking in response to God's voice, he did not enter a life of instant ease. He entered a life where trust had to grow roots. That is where many hearts become discouraged, because they imagine that if they are truly in God's will, the road should immediately become smooth, simple, and free of pain. But the life of Abraham tells you something deeper. The hard places do not cancel the promise. The waiting does not cancel the promise. The testing does not cancel the promise. The long stretch between what God said and what you can see with your eyes is not proof that heaven has gone silent. It is often the place where your spirit learns to stand. Abraham carried a promise that sounded far bigger than his present reality. God spoke of descendants, inheritance, and blessing. Yet his visible circumstances did not quickly match the magnitude of that word. Think about what that does to the human heart. You hear from God, and then you walk through days that seem to contradict what you heard. You obey, and still you wait. You surrender, and still you face barrenness, uncertainty, and questions with no immediate answer. This is where many people are tempted to believe that delay means denial. But Abraham's life reveals that delay can be a classroom. It can be the place where God untangles your need for control and teaches you how to trust without demanding constant proof. That truth matters for you right now. Some of the pain you have felt after saying yes to God has come from the distance between your obedience and your visible breakthrough. You thought that once you finally walked in His will, everything would line up at once. Instead, some areas still feel quiet. Some prayers still seem unanswered. Some promises still seem far away. But this is where the story grows stronger, not weaker. Abraham was not forgotten in the waiting years. He was being formed in them. The promise was not dying. It was ripening under divine timing. In the same way, what God has spoken over your life does not lose power just because it has not arrived on your preferred schedule. There is something holy that happens when you remain faithful in the space between word and fulfillment. Your obedience becomes less emotional and more anchored. At first, surrender may feel like a fiery moment of clarity, a turning point that fills your heart with urgency and peace. But then time passes and the deeper question rises. Will you still trust when the feeling fades and only the promise remains? Abraham had to live inside that question. He had to keep walking when the stars above him declared one thing while the emptiness in his hands seemed to declare another. He had to learn that God's faithfulness is not measured by how quickly your circumstances change, but by how surely His word stands. This is why the difficult stretch does not destroy purpose. It deepens it. If God handed you everything at once, you might celebrate the gift without growing into the vessel needed to carry it well. But when He leads you through seasons of waiting, He builds endurance, He builds humility, He builds reverence. He teaches you to stop living off appearances. He teaches you that what He has ordained cannot be stolen by time, blocked by delay, or erased by human limitation. Abraham's body aged. Sarah's womb stayed closed for years. The natural story kept saying impossible, but heaven had already spoken, and the speech of heaven outranks the evidence of the moment. You must let that settle in your spirit. The places that look barren are not bigger than God's promise. The silence is not stronger than His word. The ache is not proof of abandonment. Sometimes the very area that seems most lifeless is the place where God intends to display His faithfulness most clearly. Abraham could not manufacture the promise. He could only believe, obey, and continue walking with God. That is also your posture now. You are not called to force what only heaven can fulfill. You are called to remain aligned while heaven prepares what only heaven can release. That is why you cannot judge your life only by the chapter you are currently living in. If Abraham had judged his story too early, he might have concluded that obedience led him nowhere. But the middle of the story is never the final verdict. The waiting chapter is not the conclusion. The painful chapter is not the conclusion. The chapter where you feel stretched beyond your own understanding is not the conclusion. God writes with eternity in view. And He is never in a hurry just because your flesh feels restless. He is exact. He is intentional. He is faithful. And because this truth strengthens not only you but others who are also learning how to trust God in the waiting. Take a quiet moment to like this message. Share it with someone whose faith feels tired. And subscribe if this word is helping you stay anchored. If this ministry is feeding your spirit and you feel led to support it, there is also a way to give through the donation link in the description. Keep moving with this in your heart. The hard place does not mean you stepped outside of God's will. In Abraham's story, the difficult middle became the stage where faith matured. Every long year was still under divine attention. Every unanswered moment was still under divine authority. And when the promise finally came, it was clear that no human effort could take the credit. That is how God often works. He waits until your strength can no longer pretend to be the source. And then He moves in a way that leaves no confusion about who deserves the glory. So do not fear the waiting. Do not let the barren places interpret God to you. Do not let the unfinished chapter define the whole book. You are still under promise. You are still under instruction. You are still being led. Abraham's road proves that a delayed promise is not a broken promise, and your road will prove it too. What God began when you finally walked in His will is not fragile. It is being held by the same God who called Abraham out, sustained him through the stretch, and fulfilled every word at the appointed time. As you keep walking forward, you begin to notice something changing inside you that is even deeper than outward progress. The chaos that once ruled your thoughts does not have the same authority anymore. The noise is still around you at times. The uncertainty still appears. The pressure still tries to speak, but something in your spirit is no longer bowing to it. This is what begins to happen when obedience matures into alignment. At first, you are simply relieved that you finally said yes to God. Then, little by little, that yes starts rearranging the inside of you. What once felt scattered begins to gather. What once felt confused begins to settle. What once felt divided begins to come into agreement under the hand of God. Abraham knew this kind of inner rearranging. His story is not only about leaving one place and heading toward another. It is about learning how a life becomes ordered when it is built around the voice of God instead of the fear of man. When he first left what was familiar, he still had to grow into the peace of total dependence. He had to learn that divine alignment is not the absence of movement, but the presence of direction. He had to learn that even when the landscape around him looked uncertain, the one thing that mattered most was that he was where God told him to be. That is the kind of peace heaven wants to establish in you now. Not a shallow peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but a deep steadiness that comes from knowing you are no longer fighting God's will. For so long, inner chaos may have come from living between two worlds. Part of you wanted God, and part of you still clung to what He was asking you to release. Part of you longed for holiness, and part of you still grieved the loss of old comforts. That kind of division drains the soul. It creates unrest. It keeps the heart in a constant storm. But once obedience becomes real, the storm begins to lose its center. You are no longer being torn in opposite directions with the same force. Abraham's path shows you this with quiet power. Wherever he went, he learned to mark the journey by building altars. That detail matters. He was not just traveling across land, he was cultivating communion. He was not merely surviving uncertain terrain. He was establishing places of remembrance, places of worship, places where the presence of God became more central than the instability around him. That is what alignment looks like in lived form. It is not a person pretending life is easy. It is a person returning again and again to the place of surrender until the heart becomes anchored there. You are being invited into that same pattern. Your peace will not come from finally understanding every mystery. Your peace will come from keeping close to the one who leads you through mystery. The mind often wants full explanation before it agrees to rest. But the spirit learns something greater. It learns that nearness to God can calm what answers cannot. Abraham did not possess the whole promise at once. Yet he could still build an altar. He could still worship. He could still move forward without having every piece in his hand. That is a holy lesson for you. Alignment is not born from total information. It is born from sustained trust. There is also another side to this. As alignment increases, exposure comes. Things that once hid comfortably in your inner life begin to stand out more clearly. Old fears become easier to identify. Old patterns lose their disguise. Compromises that once seemed small begin to feel unbearable. This is not punishment. It is clarity. God is not disturbing your peace by revealing what must go. He is protecting your peace by refusing to let hidden disorder remain in charge. Abraham's life included moments where separation became necessary. Not because God delights in loss, but because not everything can travel with a person who is being aligned with covenant purpose. You know this in your own way. As you continue to walk in His will, you feel less able to live casually with what once seemed acceptable. The Spirit keeps drawing lines in places where your flesh used to blur them. He keeps teaching you that peace is not the same as comfort. Peace comes from agreement with God. Comfort can exist in places that slowly destroy the soul. Abraham had to become a man whose decisions were increasingly shaped by divine instruction instead of immediate appearance. You are being formed in that same direction now. The more your heart agrees with heaven, the less chaos can rule you from within. That is why Scripture speaks with such force when it says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee because he trusteth in thee." Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. Notice the connection. Peace is tied to focus. Peace is tied to trust. Peace is tied to the steady turning of the heart toward God. This is not the peace of passivity. It is the peace of alignment. Abraham did not become rooted by controlling the future. He became rooted by trusting the one who held it. So when old confusion tries to return, do not treat it as your master. When fear tries to rush you, do not honor its voice as wisdom. When your circumstances look unfinished, do not decide that God's order has disappeared. Return to the altar in your heart. Return to prayer. Return to surrender. Return to the place where your spirit first became willing. Divine alignment is not a one-time feeling. It is a daily yielding, a repeated choosing, a holy staying. And every time you come back into that agreement, the noise loses more power. This is how the Lord begins to replace the chaos. Not always by changing everything around you in a moment, but by establishing His government within you. Abraham's road was still long. The promise was still unfolding. The terrain was still unfamiliar. Yet in the middle of all that movement, a deeper order was being formed. The man was becoming steady because his life was being arranged around God's voice. That is what heaven is doing in you now. You are not merely being moved to a new place. You are being made into a new kind of person, one whose inward world is no longer ruled by confusion, but by trust, reverence, and the quiet strength that comes from walking in His will. Before we go deeper, there is one practical note that may help some of you who have been struggling with mental fog, poor focus, restless stress, or the feeling that your mind stays tired even when your spirit wants to stay sharp. A product often presented as the Genius Wave or Genius Song is described as a short daily audio designed to support concentration, creativity, clearer thinking, and a calmer mental state through sound-based brainwave entrainment. For some listeners, that kind of tool may seem appealing because it is meant to address everyday problems like scattered attention, low mental energy, stress, and difficulty staying productive. If you want to look into it for yourself, check only the official information linked in the description or the pinned comment. And be careful of imitation pages or fake versions. Use only the official source if you decide to try it. Now return your heart to the deeper lesson, because Abraham's story continues to show you something that your spirit needs to remember. The battle often grows more intense right before a greater unveiling of God's faithfulness. That is one of the hardest seasons to endure, because it can make you wonder whether your obedience has made life harder rather than better. You leave what God told you to leave. You choose surrender. You step away from compromise. You begin to align yourself with heaven. And then, instead of instant ease, pressure rises. Questions become louder. The wait becomes longer. The temptation to doubt becomes more aggressive. Yet that very pattern appears again and again in the lives of those who truly walk with God. The enemy does not panic when you talk about obedience. Darkness reacts when obedience becomes action. Abraham knew what it meant to keep walking under a promise while the visible world still argued against it. There were years when the word of God over his life seemed to stand in direct tension with his circumstances. His age advanced. Sarah's barrenness remained. The natural evidence kept pressing against the spiritual promise. That kind of pressure can wear on the soul if you do not learn how to interpret it correctly. Pressure is not always proof that something is wrong. Sometimes it is proof that something sacred is being contested. The deeper the promise, the more violently unbelief tries to surround it. The more meaningful your obedience becomes, the more the old voices try to reclaim access to your mind. This is why you must not misread resistance. When you finally walk in God's will, the battle often intensifies because your life is no longer drifting in harmless circles. Your agreement with God begins to threaten patterns that once kept you stuck. Fear starts losing its throne. Delay starts losing its control. Flesh starts losing its argument. And because of that, warfare becomes more obvious. You may feel it in the form of exhaustion, sudden discouragement, confusion, old temptations, or the strange urge to retreat into familiar disobedience just for relief. But relief is not the same as freedom. Abraham could not go back to his old life just because the new road demanded faith. Once God had called him forward, retreat would not have restored peace. It would have reintroduced bondage. There is a holy difference between a life that is being opposed because it is aligned and a life that is collapsing because it is compromised. Abraham's life was being tested, but it was still carried by covenant. That distinction matters. You are not meant to panic every time the road becomes narrow. You are meant to ask whether God is still with you, whether His word still stands, whether your yes is still surrendered. If the answer is yes, then the pressure around you does not have final authority. It may be intense, but it is not ultimate. It may be painful, but it is not sovereign. Think of the moment when Abraham was asked to trust God in ways deeper than mere comfort. The Lord kept drawing him beyond surface faith into covenant faith, the kind that does not merely celebrate promises in easy seasons, but clings to God when obedience feels costly. That is where heaven shapes the strongest kind of trust. Not the trust that exists only while everything feels inspiring, but the trust that survives when the soul is stretched. This is where your own life is being refined now. What you are facing is not only about getting through hardship, it is about becoming the kind of person whose confidence in God no longer depends on constant outward reassurance. That is why the breakthrough chapter often has shadows around its edges before it fully opens. The shadow does not mean the door is false. It means there is resistance near something valuable. Abraham's path did not move in a straight line of visible success. It moved through altars, waiting, correction, promise, testing, and deeper revelation. Yet through all of it, the hand of God remained steady. That same steadiness is over your life. Even when your emotions fluctuate, the hand of God does not. Even when your thoughts feel crowded, the word He spoke over your surrender does not lose its strength. Heaven is not confused about your journey just because you are still learning how to endure it. So when the battle sharpens, do not let fear become your interpreter. Let truth speak louder. The enemy wants you to believe that opposition means you should turn back. God wants you to understand that opposition often reveals you are no longer spiritually asleep. You are pushing into territory that requires courage. You are growing beyond the self that used to settle for half obedience. You are walking far enough into His will that compromise no longer feels normal. That is why the struggle can feel fierce. But fierce struggle does not mean you are losing. Sometimes it means the chains know they are being broken. Abraham kept moving, not because every day was easy, but because the voice of God had become more trustworthy to him than the evidence of delay. That is the posture being formed in you now. You are learning to stay when impatience tells you to run. You are learning to trust when your eyes see only fragments. You are learning that breakthrough is not always announced by comfort first. Sometimes it is preceded by a final surge of pressure, a final test of endurance, a final confrontation with the doubt that once ruled you. Do not fear that season. Stand inside it with your spirit awake. The God who called Abraham was not weakened by the passing years. And the God who called you is not intimidated by resistance now. What heaven has spoken over your life remains alive. What God began when you finally walked in His will is still unfolding. The pressure is real, but it is not greater than the promise. The battle is intense, but it is not greater than the covenant. And when this chapter clears, you will see that even the resistance was forced to serve your formation, because nothing that rises against God's purpose in your life can outlast the faithfulness of the one who called you forward. As you stay on this path, you begin to realize that obedience is never contained to the moment in which you say yes. It echoes, it travels, it reaches farther than your present emotions, farther than your present understanding, farther than the chapter you are standing in right now. That is one of the deepest truths in Abraham's journey. His obedience did not affect only his own comfort, his own future, or his own private relationship with God. It carried generational weight. It opened covenant history. It created a path through which blessing would move far beyond the boundaries of his single lifetime. That is why heaven rejoiced when you finally walked in His will. Not only because you changed direction, but because your yes began sending out consequences you cannot fully measure yet. Abraham could not see the full reach of his obedience when he first left the familiar behind. He was simply responding to the voice of God one step at a time. He knew he was being called out. He knew he was being led forward. He knew that staying where he was would no longer be faithfulness. But he did not yet see all that would flow from that decision. He did not yet see nations in the distance. He did not yet see the full covenant unfolding across generations. He did not yet see how deeply his trust would matter to the story of redemption itself. Yet heaven saw it. God saw the full horizon while Abraham could only see the next step. That is why your obedience matters more than your eyes can presently confirm. You may think you are simply making one hard decision. You may think you are only leaving one compromise, breaking one cycle, surrendering one burden, or stepping into one new area of faithfulness. But when a life comes into agreement with God, the impact is never that small. Your surrender changes how you speak. It changes what you tolerate. It changes how you love. It changes what kind of atmosphere you carry into rooms, relationships, work, family, and future assignments. It changes how people experience God's peace through you. It changes what spiritual inheritance gets interrupted and what new inheritance begins. Abraham's yes was bigger than Abraham's moment. In the same way, your yes is bigger than your current struggle. This is why the enemy fights obedience so fiercely. Darkness understands that one surrendered life can become a doorway for mercy to reach others. One healed heart can stop the spread of bitterness. One obedient voice can become a source of wisdom for many who are still wandering. One person who truly fears God can shift the spiritual climate of a home, a community, or a generation. You do not always feel that while you are in the middle of your own forming, but the echo is still moving. This should give you strength when the road feels hidden. Abraham had long stretches where he simply had to trust that God's word was still active beyond what he could measure. You are in such a season too. You cannot yet calculate all that your obedience is protecting you from, all that it is preparing you for, or all that it will one day release through you. Some outcomes are too deep to be seen immediately. Some fruit grows underground before it appears above the surface. Some of the greatest effects of faithfulness are first written in the invisible realm, where your spirit is being shaped, your discernment is being sharpened, and your future influence is being made clean enough to carry what God intends. This is also why you must refuse the temptation to judge your obedience only by instant results. Abraham's story was not validated by speed. It was validated by covenant faithfulness. The proof was not that every day looked impressive. The proof was that God's hand remained on the journey and God's word remained alive over the process. That same pattern is true for you. You do not need constant visible reward to know your obedience matters. You need remembrance. You need spiritual sight. You need the humility to accept that heaven often measures significance differently than the world does. The world will tell you that only public outcomes count. God will tell you that hidden faithfulness carries eternal substance. The world will tell you that what cannot be immediately celebrated must not be important. God will tell you that some of the most powerful turning points happen in silence, in prayer, in surrender, in unseen choices where the heart finally comes under divine rule. Abraham's first steps were not applauded by the world as world-changing history. Yet heaven knew exactly what had been set in motion. In the same way, your private obedience may look small to some people, but it is not small before God. And because messages like this are meant to strengthen not only your own heart, but the hearts of others who are also trying to remain faithful. Take a moment to like this message, share it with someone who needs courage to keep obeying, and subscribe if these words are helping you stay grounded. If this ministry has been a true source of encouragement to you and you want to support it, you can also find a way to give in the description. Now let your heart return to the deeper river of this truth. Abraham walked forward without seeing the full architecture of what his obedience would build. That required a certain kind of surrender that many never reach. It required the willingness to trust that God's purposes are often much larger than personal convenience. It required the humility to know that your role is to obey, while God's role is to unfold the meaning of that obedience across time. That is where peace begins to deepen in you. You stop trying to control every consequence. You stop demanding that every seed sprout in front of your eyes. You begin to understand that the God who asked for your yes is also the God who carries the outcome. So do not underestimate the echo of your obedience. What changed in you is already reaching further than you know. The decision to walk in His will is already rewriting things that fear once tried to author. The peace you are gaining is already affecting how you respond under pressure. The clarity you are gaining is already affecting what you accept and what you reject. The holiness you are growing in is already preparing you to carry blessing without corruption. Like Abraham, you are becoming part of a story larger than yourself, even if you can only feel a small piece of it right now. One day you will see more clearly what heaven saw when you first surrendered. You will understand why the warfare increased. You will understand why the hidden years mattered. You will understand why the call would not leave you alone. Your yes was not merely an emotional turning point. It was an eternal agreement. It was a sacred realignment. It was the beginning of ripples that move through places you cannot measure yet. And because God wastes nothing surrendered to Him, every true act of obedience you offer becomes part of a greater design, held securely by the same faithful hand that called Abraham out and led him step by step into promise. As the journey continues, you begin to understand a mystery that once felt impossible to believe. When you truly walk in God's will, certain doors begin to open without the strain that used to exhaust you. This does not mean life becomes effortless in every visible way. It means the burden of forced striving begins to loosen. The need to manufacture what only God can provide starts to fall away. You stop living as though your future depends entirely on your own pressure, your own cleverness, your own frantic effort to keep everything from collapsing. Abraham's story reveals this with quiet power. The man who was called out by God was not sustained by self-made promotion. He was carried by promise. And when the time appointed by heaven arrived, what God had spoken began to appear in ways that no human strength could have produced. This is one of the most healing truths for your soul in this season. Before alignment, you may have lived with a constant inner urgency, as if everything depended on your ability to push harder, fix faster, explain better, and hold every piece together by force. That kind of striving wears a person down. It drains peace. It distorts discernment. It teaches the heart to treat anxiety as responsibility. But once you come fully into agreement with God, you begin to learn a different rhythm. You still act. You still obey. You still move when He speaks. Yet the movement is no longer driven by panic. It is guided by trust. Abraham had to learn that lesson over many years. God gave him a promise so large that it could never be fulfilled by natural strength alone. The waiting stripped him of illusion. The delay confronted every part of him that wanted control. The years kept reminding him that if the promise came, it would come because God was faithful, not because Abraham had found a way to outmaneuver limitation. That is a painful lesson for the flesh, but it is a liberating one for the spirit. It teaches you that the deepest doors in your life are not opened by desperation. They are opened by divine timing meeting surrendered faith. You can feel that truth becoming real in your own walk now. Some things you once chased begin to come into proper order only after you stop worshiping them. Some connections become healthier only after you release the fear of losing them. Some opportunities appear only after your heart is no longer bowing to them for identity. This is the paradox of the kingdom. When you cling from fear, you often create distortion. When you surrender in trust, you make room for God's arrangement. Abraham did not receive the promise by obsessing over it day and night in restless unbelief. He received it as a man being taught to live under covenant, as one whose life had gradually been transferred from self-reliance into trust. There is such freedom in that. It means your future is not held together by your private panic. It means your calling is not so fragile that one season of waiting can destroy it. It means God's plan over your life is not dependent on you becoming a machine of endless performance. Obedience matters deeply, yes. Faithfulness matters deeply, yes. But striving and faithfulness are not the same thing. One is born from fear of lack. The other is born from agreement with God. Abraham was faithful, but his faithfulness was meant to lead him into deeper rest in the reliability of God's word. That is why the opening doors in your life may not always look dramatic at first. Sometimes the first door that opens is inward. A new steadiness appears. A new patience grows. A new freedom from comparison rises. A new ability to wait without falling apart begins to form. Then from that inner place, outward things also begin to shift. Provision comes in ways you could not have scripted. Clarity appears where confusion once ruled. Relationships reveal their true nature. Assignments become clearer. What used to feel locked begins to loosen. Not because you mastered control, but because surrender made space for God's order. Abraham's life carries this message with such strength because his greatest outcomes were clearly marked by divine action. When Isaac finally came, nobody could honestly say that human ability had produced the promise. It was too late for natural pride to take credit. The timing made it unmistakable. God had done what only God could do. That is often how heaven works in the lives of those who obey. The delay removes boasting. The process purifies motives. The fulfillment arrives with a kind of holy clarity that points back to the faithfulness of God rather than the brilliance of man. Let this settle into your spirit with the force of Scripture. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. Genesis chapter 21, verse 1. That single line carries such deep comfort. As he had said, as he had spoken, not almost, not partly, not in a broken way. God acted according to his own word. That is the foundation beneath your hope as well. What he speaks, he still watches over. What he promises, he still remembers. What he begins, he does not abandon halfway through. So you do not need to live like a person abandoned to chance. You do not need to claw at every closed door as if heaven has forgotten your name. You do not need to force what God has not released or revive what God has allowed to die. Your task is not to become the source. Your task is to remain surrendered to the source. Abraham's road proves that promotion without God is fragile, but promise with God is unshakable. Doors opened by flesh require constant flesh to maintain them. Doors opened by God come with the grace needed to walk through them. This is the beautiful shift happening in you now. You are learning to labor without panic, to wait without despair, to obey without manipulation, and to trust without seeing every detail in advance. That is not weakness. That is maturity. The life that used to run on fear is being retrained to move by faith. And as that happens, you will notice more and more that what belongs in your journey begins to arrive in peace. not merely in pressure. Abraham discovered that the promise did not need his anxiety to survive. It needed his faith. And so does your future. The God who called you into his will is fully able to open what must open, fulfill what must be fulfilled, and lead you into what no amount of striving could ever produce on your own. By this point in the journey, you begin to understand that obedience is never only about your own rescue, your own peace, or your own blessing. God does heal you, steady you, and align you, but he is also shaping you into someone through whom mercy can flow. That is one of the most overlooked parts of walking in his will. Many people want the protection of obedience without accepting the transformation that obedience brings. They want deliverance from chaos, but they do not yet understand that true alignment with God also softens the heart, deepens compassion, and teaches the soul how to carry power without becoming hard. Abraham shows you this in a deeply beautiful way. As the years unfolded, Abraham did not remain only a man who received promises. He became a man who stood in the place of intercession. That shift matters. At first, much of his story seems centered on what God is calling him out of and what God is leading him toward. But as his walk deepens, you begin to see another dimension emerging. The man who learned to trust God for his own path also learned how to stand before God on behalf of others. That is a mark of maturity. A person who is truly being changed by obedience does not become more self-absorbed. He becomes more merciful. This is important for you right now, because after long seasons of pain, misunderstanding, delay, and inner warfare, the human tendency is to become guarded in the wrong way. You can start thinking that if you finally survive the battle, then the whole purpose was simply your own relief. But heaven often has something richer in mind. God does not only pull you through darkness so that you can finally breathe again. He also forms in you a heart that knows how to pray, how to forgive, how to carry compassion, and how to respond to the brokenness of others without pride. Abraham's life proves that. Think of the moment when Abraham stood before God concerning Sodom. This is not the posture of a shallow man. This is not the posture of someone who has only learned to seek blessing for himself. This is a man whose walk with God has matured enough that he dares to plead for mercy. He knows God's justice is real, but he also appeals to God's compassion. He stands there with holy boldness, asking again and again whether mercy might spare others. That moment reveals how deeply obedience had already worked within him. He was no longer only thinking in terms of his own future. His heart had become tender enough to carry concern for lives beyond his own. That is what God is doing in you as well when you truly walk in his will. He is not merely cleaning up your direction. He is enlarging your heart. The mercy you receive is meant to reshape the mercy you give. The patience God has shown you is meant to soften the way you look at others who are still struggling. The grace that kept calling you back when you were delayed is meant to change the tone of your spirit when you encounter people who are still in their own wrestling. This does not mean you become naive. It does not mean you stop honoring truth. It means truth and mercy begin to live together in you in a more Christ-like way. There is a beautiful danger in suffering. It can either make a person bitter or make a person deep. Abraham's story shows the deeper path. The waiting years did not leave him empty of feeling. The stretching did not turn him cold. Walking with God had refined him into someone who could receive promise and still care about other people. That is maturity. That is spiritual beauty. And that is one reason heaven rejoices when you finally walk in his will. Because heaven sees not only the blessing coming toward you, but also the mercy that will eventually move through you. Some of the people around you may never realize that your obedience is protecting them, covering them in prayer, or changing the spiritual atmosphere they live in. Some blessings flow into homes because one person finally decided to fear God. Some cycles are interrupted because one person stopped obeying the voice of pain and started obeying the voice of God. Some people receive the kindness of God through the prayers of someone who has learned not to let suffering poison their heart. Abraham became that kind of person. And as you keep walking with God, so will you. This is why your healing cannot end in self-preservation. It must grow into intercession. It must grow into compassion. It must grow into a holy willingness to stand before God and say, Lord, let mercy move. Lord, remember them. Lord, draw them. Lord, spare them. Lord, awaken them. That kind of prayer is not weakness. It is strength purified by love. It is what happens when obedience has gone deeper than behavior and started transforming the heart itself. Hold close the witness of Scripture here. And Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Genesis chapter 18, verse 23. That question carries more than concern about one city. It reveals a man whose communion with God had formed courage, reverence, and compassion together. He drew near, he spoke, he interceded. That is the fruit of a life being shaped by divine friendship. So as you continue on this path, do not measure success only by what opens for you, what changes for you, or what gets restored to you. Ask also what is being formed within you for the sake of others. Ask whether your heart is becoming softer where it once was hard. Ask whether mercy is growing stronger than resentment. Ask whether your prayers are carrying more compassion than judgment. That is part of your assignment too. If this word speaks to you, comment God, show mercy. The deeper miracle is not only that you escaped the old life, it is that you are becoming the kind of person who can help others find their way out. Abraham's story keeps leading you to this truth. Walking in God's will does not shrink the heart, it expands it. It teaches you to carry promise without arrogance, authority without cruelty, and conviction without losing compassion. That is how mercy changes more than you. It changes what flows through you. And when that begins to happen, your obedience becomes not only a blessing over your own life, but a vessel through which heaven can reach further than you ever imagined. By now, you can feel the weight of a truth that many people do not learn until much later, if they learn it at all. Reaching a place of blessing is not the end of the test. Sometimes it is the beginning of a deeper one. After long waiting, long surrender, long warfare, and long hidden formation, there comes a moment when what God promised starts becoming visible. Something opens, something settles, something arrives. There is relief in that. There is gratitude in that. There is holy joy in that. But there is also a quiet danger if the heart is not watched carefully. The danger is not always open rebellion. More often it is a subtle shift, where the gift begins to take the place that belongs only to God. That is why Abraham's story remains so necessary for you here. He did not only need faith while the promise was far away, he also needed faith after the promise was in his hands. In some ways, that second stage can be even more revealing. It is one thing to trust God for what you do not yet see. It is another thing to keep God above what you have finally received. Abraham had waited for Isaac through years that stretched human hope to its limit. He had endured the long distance between divine word and visible fulfillment. He had seen the impossible become real by the hand of God. But then came the deeper question: would the man who loved the promise still love the promiser more? This is where your own heart must become very watchful. As God begins to answer, as peace begins to grow, as doors begin to open, as clarity begins to replace confusion, You must guard against the temptation to settle into spiritual carelessness. The soul can become relaxed in the wrong way after breakthrough. Prayer can grow thinner. Dependence can grow weaker. Gratitude can quietly be replaced by possession. What was once received with trembling reverence can slowly be handled with casual attachment. That is why success is not always safer than struggle. Sometimes struggle kept you near to God, while blessing tempts you to live as though you no longer need to cling so closely. Abraham was brought into that sacred tension when God tested him concerning Isaac. This was not cruelty. It was revelation. God was exposing what sat highest in Abraham's heart. The issue was never that Isaac was evil. Isaac was a gift, a miracle, a promised son. The issue was whether even a God-given blessing could become untouchable in the affections of the heart. That is a searching lesson for anyone who has walked through long waiting. The very thing you cried for can become the thing you hold too tightly. The very answer that once made you worship can become the thing you fear losing more than you fear drifting from God. You must let that truth search you gently but honestly. What has God brought into your life in this season that now requires clean stewardship instead of anxious possession? It may be peace. It may be influence. It may be a relationship, an opportunity, a healed season, a restored mind, or a clearer sense of purpose. None of those things are wrong. In fact, many of them may be direct gifts from the Lord. But every gift must remain under the altar. Every blessing must remain surrendered. Every answer must stay in its rightful place. The heart must never say, "I can breathe now because I finally have this." It must continue to say, "I live because God is faithful." That is the beauty of Abraham's maturity. He did not become perfect, but he became deeply surrendered. When tested, he showed that even the dearest gift in his life could not outrank the voice of God. That kind of obedience is not built in one dramatic day. It is formed across years of walking, years of trusting, years of learning that God himself is the treasure beneath every promise. Abraham had come too far with God to reduce the relationship to the blessing. He had learned that covenant is deeper than comfort. He had learned that the presence of God is more precious than the most miraculous outcome. This is the lesson heaven wants written into your spirit now. Guard the heart after arrival. Guard it in quiet ways. Guard it when things begin to feel stable. Guard it when the tears of waiting have passed. Guard it when others start noticing the change in your life. Guard it when what once felt impossible starts feeling normal. Stay low before God. Stay reverent. Stay teachable. Stay quick to surrender. Stay willing to place everything back into his hands. The heart that remains yielded after blessing is a heart that can be trusted with even more. Scripture puts this before you with sobering beauty. And he said, "Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest." Genesis chapter 22, verse 2. Those words go straight to the center, whom thou lovest. God named the affection directly. He touched the place most precious to Abraham, not to destroy him, but to reveal that true worship leaves nothing outside the reach of surrender. That is still how God deals with the hearts he is shaping for lasting purpose. So do not assume that arrival means you can drift. Do not assume that answered prayer removes the need for vigilance. The enemy often studies people most carefully after they have come through the hardest battles, because that is when subtle pride, false security, and misplaced affection try to enter unnoticed. But you are being warned in love. You are being taught before the drift can grow. You are being called to keep your inward altar burning even while outward blessings increase. Abraham's story shows that the safest place is still the surrendered place, not the wealthy place, not the visible place, not the fulfilled place, the surrendered place. There the heart remains clean. There the soul remains free. There blessing does not become bondage. There the gift does not become an idol. There success does not corrupt intimacy. And there the person who once cried out for God's will continues to walk in it with the same holy fear that marked the beginning. So keep watching your heart. Keep placing every gift before God. Keep loving Him above what He gives. That is how you remain steady after arrival. That is how promise stays pure. That is how the life that heaven rejoiced over at the beginning remains aligned all the way through. Abraham guarded the center by proving that even after receiving the promise, his deepest loyalty still belonged to the one who gave it. That same loyalty will preserve you now. Now you stand in a place that once felt far away, not because every mystery has been solved, not because every battle has vanished, and not because you have become flawless overnight, but because you finally know who you are becoming under the hand of God. You are no longer the person who keeps circling the same mountain while calling delay discernment. You are no longer the person who confuses compromise with peace. You are no longer the person who keeps one hand on obedience and the other hand on the life God already told you to release. Something has changed in you. Something holy has settled in you, and heaven has not missed one part of it. All the way through Abraham's journey, the deeper story was never only about land, descendants, waiting, altars, or promise. It was about identity shaped by surrender. It was about a man being drawn out of the ordinary and trained to walk as one set apart by covenant. That is why his story has followed you through these sections so closely. He began by leaving what was familiar. He was tested in the hidden places. He learned how to trust during delay. He discovered peace through alignment. He endured resistance without abandoning the promise. He walked long enough to see that obedience echoes beyond the self. He learned that God opens what human striving cannot. He grew into mercy. He guarded his heart after receiving what was promised. And now his story leaves you at the threshold of your own crowned identity. Not a crown of pride, not a crown of self-importance, but the quiet authority of a life that finally belongs to God without divided loyalty. This is the kind of identity heaven celebrates. Not the identity built on applause, image, status, or human approval, but the identity formed in surrender, obedience, and holy endurance. The world tells you to become someone by collecting power for yourself. God teaches you to become who you were meant to be by laying yourself before Him. The world says protect your image. God says guard your heart. The world says force your rise. God says walk with me and I will establish what belongs to you. The world says prove yourself. God says trust me enough to obey when nobody is clapping. Abraham became great not because he worshipped greatness, but because he walked with God. That same marking is on you now. You are not crowned because life became easy. You are crowned because you stayed yielded. You are not crowned because you escaped struggle. You are crowned because struggle did not own you forever. You are not crowned because you made yourself holy through effort alone. You are crowned because mercy kept calling you. And at last you answered with your life. That is why this ending is really a beginning. The person who walks from here is not the same person who first trembled at the call. You have been shaped by the journey. You have been thinned of some illusions, stripped of some idols, healed of some old loyalties, and strengthened in places that used to collapse under fear. And in this final movement, let your heart grow quiet before God. Let this become prayer in you, natural and honest and alive. Father, thank you for not giving up on the one listening right now. Thank you for every time you called them back when they were drifting. Thank you for every warning that protected them, every delay that preserved them, every hard season that taught them to trust you more deeply. Thank you for the moment they finally said yes with their whole heart. Thank you that heaven rejoices over true surrender. Thank you that your will is not a burden meant to crush them, but a path meant to awaken them to who they were created to be. Lord, keep them steady now. Guard their heart from fear, pride, confusion, and weariness. Do not let them turn back to what you delivered them from. Let their minds stay clear, their spirits stay tender, and their steps stay aligned with your voice. Heal what still hurts in secret. Strengthen what still feels weak. Untangle every lie that tells them they are too late, too broken, or too ordinary to be used by you. Let peace settle where striving once ruled. Let courage rise where hesitation used to live. Let their life become a place where your presence rests with joy. And Father, as you did with Abraham, teach them to walk as a true friend of God. Teach them to trust without seeing every detail. Teach them to carry blessing without pride. Teach them to hold every gift with open hands. Teach them to become merciful, watchful, faithful, and fully yours. Let their obedience bless more people than they can count. Let their yes echo farther than they can imagine. Let this be the season where what you began in surrender grows into a life marked by quiet authority, deep peace, and lasting fruit. In your holy name, amen. Carry that prayer with you now, because this is not just something you listen to. This is something you must continue to walk. Let the truth keep breathing in your daily choices. Let it shape your private decisions. Let it guide your speech, your thoughts, your habits, your boundaries, and your worship. A crowned identity is not worn for a moment and then forgotten. It is lived, it is guarded, it is renewed through daily surrender. And if this message has truly walked with you through these moments, through these hidden places of your own heart, then gently take a moment to like this message. Share it with someone who needs confirmation that obedience is worth it, and subscribe so you can stay connected to future words that strengthen your spirit. If you feel led to support this work, there is also a way to give through the description. You are not who you were when this journey began. Heaven knows it, your spirit knows it. The road ahead will still require faith, but you will not walk it as the same divided person. You walk now as one who has been called, corrected, carried, and aligned. You walk now as one whose yes has been heard. You walk now as one whose obedience has brought joy to heaven. And because of that, you can move forward without shrinking, without pretending, and without surrendering your place again. The God who called Abraham out, formed him in the hidden years, and established him in promise is the same God who will continue leading you from this moment on. So stand tall in humility, walk softly before God, and keep going. You are finally walking in His will, and that changes everything.